Voting is taking place in the U.S. state of Georgia in two vital runoffs for the U.S. Senate. If the Democrats can beat the Republicans in both seats, they will take control of the Senate. Official figures in the UK say that 1 in 50 people in England were infected with coronavirus last week. It comes as England and Scotland have each begun new lockdowns driven by rising infection rates. Germany is extending the closure of schools, nurseries, shops, restaurants, arts and leisure facilities until the end of January. People living in places with particularly high infection rates will be confined to a 15-kilometre radius from their home. Saudi Arabia and several of its allies in the Gulf have agreed to normalise diplomatic relations with the state of Qatar. They were suspended after Qatar was accused of backing militant groups.
Iranian media says Iranian forces have seized a South Korean-registered oil ship in the Strait of Hormuz. The country also said it would begin producing highly enriched uranium. A judge in Britain has blocked sending Julian Assange to the United States for trial over releasing secret documents. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga says several measures to fight the coronavirus are being considered so that the Summer Olympic Games can be held in Tokyo this year. And California Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi was re-elected Speaker of the House on Sunday.
We start here in Japan. Health authorities reported more than 4,900 new coronavirus cases on Tuesday. 76 people died. Both figures are daily records. The increases come as the central government considers declaring another state of emergency for Tokyo and 3 neighboring prefectures, Kanagawa, Saitama, and Chiba. The area now accounts for half of the country's daily infections. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide says the government will make a final decision about the state of emergency on Thursday. The measure is likely to remain in place for around a month. The declaration will give prefectural governors the legal authority to urge residents to cooperate with prevention efforts.
A state of emergency declaration will lead to stepped-up measures. I hope they will be more effective.
The 4 governors will ask people to refrain from non-essential outings after 8 p.m. They'll also request that bars and restaurants close by that time. But a state of emergency is less rigid in Japan than in many Western countries. It has so far relied on voluntary closures rather than strict lockdowns. Suga says he'll submit a legal revision to the diet that would allow penalties for those who do not comply. The education minister says the government will not request schools to close, drawing mixed reactions from students.
I can study hard at school. I don't want my school closed.
I'd rather study at home, even if I have to do lots of homework.
But transportation will likely be affected. The Tokyo governor is asking railway companies to stop running earlier than usual. And All Nippon Airways says if there's a decline in demand, it'll reduce the number of flights to and from the capital. The state of emergency will look a lot different than when the entire country was affected in April. NHK World's Nishikawa Mitsuko looks into the effectiveness of the government's latest strategy.
The latest state of emergency would target outbreaks in places like this, busy areas where people come to eat and drink. Officials hope that asking restaurants and bars to close earlier will help curb a surge in cases.
It's a far cry from last April. Businesses closed, schools were suspended, and people made major changes to their habits. The work seemed to pay off, with daily infection counts dropping by more than 95% from its peak to 21 cases more than a month later, when the emergency declaration was lifted.
When the first state of emergency was announced, people were shocked, and they cooperated to bring the outbreak under control. But I wonder if we can get the same level of cooperation as before, this time.
There's reason to be concerned, since measures are mainly voluntary. Tokyo officials say fewer people are following requests. Some restaurants refuse to close early. Experts say eating out is risky behavior, but eliminating the danger would require sacrifices.
If it's issued, food workers won't receive their salary, and we won't be able to eat out when we want to. I feel like we're deadlocked.
There will be a lot of opposition to closing the restaurants early, but I think we have to take care of ourselves.
It's a more difficult promise to make for restaurant owners, already struggling under the effect of the pandemic. This latest ask is bringing many to their breaking point. Shimizu Kosuke runs 8 restaurants in Tokyo. He says the latest measure casts a shadow over his future. In April, Shimizu focused on takeout food, but it wasn't enough to make ends meet, even with subsidies.
I need to get a fair amount of financial support from the government. Otherwise, I think I'll go bankrupt.
The government says monetary aid is part of its game-changer strategy. So is stricter enforcement, but that will take some time.
The Prime Minister is considering a legal change that would allow Japan to fine anyone who breaks the rules. In the meantime, the effectiveness of the new advice could come down to how many people are willing to follow it. Nishikawa Mitsuko, NHK World.
In the United States, people who were first in line to receive the coronavirus vaccine are now getting their second shots. Inoculations with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine began in the U.S. on December 14th. The 2 shots are to be administered 3 weeks apart. On Monday, critical care nurse Sandra Lindsay received her second dose in New York. She was among the first U.S. medical workers to get the initial shot.
In addition to, just looking at me, using me as an example that the vaccine is safe.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says more than 15 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine had been distributed nationwide as of Monday, but it says the total number of doses administered stood at just over 4.5 million, falling far short of the federal government's target of 20 million people by the end of December. A vaccination center in Florida ran out of stock in just 2 hours on Monday. People hoping to get inoculated arrived in vehicles, forming a waiting line several kilometers long. Meanwhile, voting in the state of Georgia for twin runoff elections that'll decide the balance of power in Congress has started. The races are set to determine whether President-elect Joe Biden's Democratic Party will gain control of the Senate. Polling stations opened on Tuesday morning. If Democrats win both races, they would effectively control the Senate for the first time in years, since Kamala Harris would cast the deciding vote as vice president. If Republicans win either seat, the party would retain a slim majority and could block Biden's legislative agenda. The Democrats maintained control of the House in the November elections. Biden called for Democratic support at a rally in Atlanta on Monday. He once again criticized Trump's handling of the coronavirus and pledged to speed up vaccinations.
The president spends more time whining and complaining than doing something about the problem. I don't know why he still wants the job. He doesn't want to do the work.
Trump also held a rally in the state, attacking Biden and stoking fears over the Democrats' immigration policies.
And they'll throw open American borders and allow tens of millions of illegal immigrants to pour into our country from every corner of the globe.
The latest polls suggest both Democratic candidates have a slim lead over the Republican incumbents. Due to the pandemic, the number of mail-in ballots has increased, meaning it could take a few days to know the result. The mayor of Washington, D.C. has requested the deployment of National Guard troops this week in the Capitol, where U.S. President Donald Trump supporters are planning a massive protest. Congress is expected to officially count votes by the state's electors on Wednesday and certify Joe Biden's victory in the presidential election. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has asked Washingtonians to stay out of the downtown area on Tuesday and Wednesday and to not engage with demonstrators seeking confrontation. Members of the far-right organization Proud Boys are expected to join the protests in support of Trump. The leader of the group was arrested on Monday. He was accused of burning a Black Lives Matter banner hanging from a black church in downtown Washington during a protest last month. Massive protests in the city after the election twice led to clashes between Trump supporters and their opponents. President Trump has expressed his intention to attend this week's protest. Iran says it's resumed the process to enrich uranium to 20% purity. It's the latest in a string of violations that began after the U.S. unilaterally withdrew from a landmark nuclear deal and reimposed sanctions on Iran in 2018. A government spokesperson says the process started on Monday, but did not say when it would reach the 20% level. Some experts say uranium enriched at that level can be quickly converted for use in nuclear weapons. The 2015 nuclear pact Iran signed with major world powers limited enrichment to under 4%, a level considered to be within the scope of peaceful activities. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed Iran has begun the enrichment process in a report sent to member states. The UN nuclear watchdog had earlier warned that Tehran was stepping up activities. An expert says Iran's latest move is meant to send a message that it's not bound to any agreement.
It is a tactic for the Iranians to use to exert pressure on the Europeans as well as even the Americans that they are ready to move even further. So it is sort of a blackmail. It is sort of it is sort of a threat that they are now trying to use.
The expert added that there's a chance that European countries and the incoming Biden administration will work together to address the issue and that Iran may temper its uranium enrichment. But until then, he says, tensions will remain high. It's time for a check on the weather with our meteorologist, Jonathan O. The remnants of a tropical system, are bringing plenty of rain for northeastern portions of Australia. Jonathan has a look at the situation.
Hello, we've been watching the remnants of a tropical system that made landfall in Queensland, but it is still bringing some significant rain into the northern areas of the state, and we will still be dealing with this as we go throughout Wednesday. Looking at the forecast for the next 24 hours, there's that heavy rain that's going to be rolling through near Cairns, and then we'll see it maybe fizzling out, but the system still has the instability to bring some of those showers and thunderstorms. So coming up on Wednesday, Cairns, high of 31 with thunderstorms. We'll still see the tropical pattern across Darwin, so that brings thunderstorms as well. Seeing more rain to Brisbane and Sydney as we go through the middle of this week. Snow is the big story still across the northeastern areas of Japan, and we're going to still be dealing with more accumulation as we go throughout the rest of this week. Some areas getting close to 3 meters in snow depth on the ground, and we will be talking about more snow on the way with cold air really pushing in and a low that will be dropping through. So be on the lookout. We're talking about some significant accumulation possible as we go throughout the rest of this week. In the process, some really frigid air will be moving in. Notice by Thursday into Friday, you're going to get a much bigger dumping of some snow. Some places like Osaka may also see a chance for some snow coming up on Thursday. Look at this. Niigata may even have some strong winds coming up on Thursday with that snow. Tokyo, you'll be dropping down to the single digits for highs coming up on Friday. And Osaka, you'll be in the single digits for Thursday with a snow possibility along with a high of only 4. That's going to be on the chilly side on Friday.